You are listening to the Be a Better Being podcast, hosted by the founder of Better Beings, Michelle Zellner. Michelle's experiences have equipped her with knowledge and perspective, and for nearly 3 decades, she has been informing, influencing, and inspiring thousands on their journeys. This show spotlights guests of diverse backgrounds and areas of expertise, but they all align with Michelle's purpose and passion to help you be a better human being. There is something for everyone on their way to a healthier, happier life. Enjoy the show.
Greetings. Thank you for tuning into the Be a Better Being podcast. This is episode 132, being released on March 3rd. I am in year 4 of this podcast, and since day one, I have wanted this person to come on the show. It's never really worked out, and of course, all for divine reasons, because there is no better time than today to record, which is actually January 21st, and to be released in March because we have some special things to talk about. Who is she? She is Tahverlee. She is the heart and high priestess of the Moon Temple Mystery School, guiding seekers through the mystical landscapes of self-discovery, witchcraft, empowerment, and spiritual awakening. Rooted in ancient wisdom and aligned with the wild, she bridges the mundane and the magical, empowering others to embrace their full power and sovereignty. Tahverlee is redefining what it means to be a modern feminist icon and spiritual leader, an accomplished speaker, social impact entrepreneur, and host of a top-rated podcast. She is also the visionary founder of WitchFest, the largest event of its kind, where she inspired others to break free from the limiting beliefs and reclaim their power. As a TikTok star and business expert, Tahverlee merges the mystical and the practical, showing that magic belongs not only in sacred circles, but also in the everyday world. She is a mother, grandmother, and eternal student of life, and I am proud and honored and obviously emotional to call her my friend. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. When I hear your voice crack, my whole body just goes, oh, wow. And did you say episode 132? Let's celebrate you for a moment. 4 years? Wow.
Well, who do I get to blame for all of this?
Blame. I mean, it was really quite funny. Shall we start with the story of what popped up on my Instagram memories today?
Let's do, which is why I had to put out there that we are recording this on January 21st. So just about an hour ago, you sent me a text. And what was that popped up?
It was the craziest thing. So over 7 years ago, I desired to start a podcast, and I knew I needed to be using my voice, but honestly, I was scared. I was scared. As you know, I had all these fears and issues, and I didn't know how to do it. And I thought for sure I needed to do it with a group. And so you and I, with someone else as well, we explored starting a podcast together. We even took photos, all kinds of things. And the funniest thing is that a memory popped up today on Instagram 7 years ago today that we had done our first test recording. We were sitting around a table, I'm looking at the camera. You and I are both smiling, having no idea what we were doing or even, knowing now what we know. When I look back, I'm like, wow, look at how that was the seed to where we both are now. Even though we didn't end up doing a podcast together, it's still amazing that today was 7 years ago today. My mind is blown.
Well, mine as well. And actually, it wasn't long before that I met you. In fact, I remember you literally blew into my life in early December of that year. So yeah, we just hit the 7-year mark of even knowing each other. And yet, I look back at who we both were 7 years ago, and it's amazing what can happen in 7 years.
It really is wild. I even have a memory that comes up of you and I sitting in your hot tub when I came out of the broom closet to you. I remember it. And one of the things you said to me, and I don't know if you said it then or shortly after, but you said to me that, wow, it's always good to have a witch in your pocket. And I actually use that in marketing after you've said that, because I'm like, oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yes, it
but
is.
we've both been through so much transformation together. And I'm just super proud of you. I'm so happy to be here. I could gush and cry and all the things because you are amazing. And what you're doing on this podcast is amazing.
Well, thank you, friend. But honestly, we're here to talk about you. So let's just go back to 7 years ago. Like you said, you came out of the broom closet to me more than, a few years ago now, but 7 years ago, this was not who you were and what you were doing. So let's maybe start there and just take it from that to where you are and what you are doing currently.
Yeah. Thank you for weaving myself back to it. And it's always really fascinating for me to revisit where I was at the stage in my life when I truly started questioning, like, is this all there is? Which is what happened. And it happened after a series of, health issues that came up. It happened after different ruptures in my life. And those ruptures, as all of us, right? We have these ruptures that happen through our life, and, we grow resilient, we grow in all these ways. But for me, there was this little inkling that was always in my field that was just kind of a whisper of, is this all there is? Is this it? And when I finally had the courage to ask that question out loud, what happened is it led me to these series of awakenings after awakenings after awakenings. And honestly, I'm still, experiencing new levels of awakenings all the time. And when that was happening, what I had done is I started segregating myself, right? Like, you met the version of me that was focused on, starting my first business, which I still have. I have, the mystery school, and I still do social impact work. But it kept me in these segregated places. The business side of me, was over here and known as a business professional in all these areas. And then this part of me over here was a, competitive weightlifter or a Krav Maga instructor. And then this side of me over here, after dark and on the weekends, I was playing in the unseen worlds, right? I was shamanic drumming. I was dancing in cemeteries under the moon. I was learning truly how to awaken my own true set of confidence that lived inside of me, that comes from what I believe to be many lifetimes. But I still kept them all separate. I knew, I knew who I was. I knew what I wanted to do, but I still carried such a fear of judgment. And I now would probably say I was carrying a lot of witch wounding when that happened, because I felt safer if you knew me as this because we had connected on that level, or this person over here knew me as this because we had connected on that level. And yet what happened is I realized I was only allowing you into a small piece, right? And I was only allowing this part of me over here to a small piece. And I think that we do that, right? To fit in. We do that to try to make sure that we're safe and we're not going to be judged. And so as I continue to awaken deeper and deeper, I say that asking the question of, is this all there is, awakened me to the unseen worlds. And the moment I stepped into the unseen worlds, well, then the witch awakened for sure in me. And when the witch awakened, well, then the spirits awakened. And when the spirits awakened, then I couldn't keep myself segregated any longer. And when I did that, it also just, the fear of judgment, I mean, it's still there. I mean, we're going to talk today, I'm sure, about the fact that I have a book coming out. I'm facing all new levels, as you know, of being seen when you release something like a book. But yeah, that's the transformation. And I say that even if you just set the word witch aside, because for some people they're like, oh, what is that? And instead just replace it with accessing wisdom, right? Through nature, accessing wisdom through the interconnectedness of all things that we experience in life. If you replace the word witch with that, then you'll see that we all go through this.
Well, I think you're right about, especially the word witch or witchcraft. People have a very finite idea of what they think that means. And I'm not here to tell anybody to not think what you think, but I would like to maybe open them up to some perspective or a different way of looking at things. So how do you, when someone's like, oh, a witch, and even, I know you were afraid to tell me. I know you were, that you have this side to you. And I was, like I said, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever.
It was awesome. It was so awesome.
I wasn't rooted in religion, but I've always felt very connected. I talk about that in my book and on my podcast, this connection to people and things and my dreams. And, you've drawn some of that out of me over the years as well. And so to me, it makes total sense. But I know to other people, this does not make any kind of sense at all. In fact, some of them will think it's evil, right? They have all these ideas of what it is. So how do you share what you are, what you do in a way that maybe can open somebody up to at least having a different perspective of it?
Hmm. Yeah, it is a hard question and one that I get often. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story. I was sitting, at a restaurant having dinner a few nights ago, and somebody a couple of seats over heard me talking with the person I was having dinner with about the fact that I have a book coming out. And this person said, "Oh, you have a book coming out. What is it about?" And I said, "Witchcraft." And I stopped and their faces got fully white. Like I could see the blood draining from their face. And I just smiled and waited to see what questions would come forward. But I'll explain it. A good way to think of it is the difference between, say, like rituals and spirituality and witchcraft. Like, what's the difference between the two is a good way to think about it. Because I think most people now, especially those like yourself that are walking a path of trying to be the best, healthiest version of themselves, right? Which, I am, you are, is we know that there is a source bigger than us. There's something more, right? There's something more than, and it, you can define it as God, goddess, universe, source. Like I feel like most people now can sense in their body that there's something more out there. And the path of spirituality is just being able to connect to that source, right? Just knowing that, maybe zooming your perspective out a little bit out of the mundane and into the bigger picture of like your soul and your purpose. And those things are most people understand and can swallow that a little bit easier. Where the difference between that and witchcraft comes in is knowing that connection exists. How do you then utilize the energy of that connection to make a better life for yourself, for your community? And, you might think of a word like manifesting kind of falls into that category, but really at the core of what manifesting is it's just saying that this is something that I desire. And how am I going to align my frequency with what it is that I desire? And that's for a lot of people, that'll be a whole lifetime of study. But witchcraft is kind of the same. It's how do I align my energy to the interconnectedness of all things, like plants and trees and water and humans and my heart? And how do I use that energy to make my life better? And that's literally what 99% of spells, rituals is how do I align myself to the energy of what I desire, which in most cases that means how do I align myself to be a better human? Like truly, that's what it means. Because the moment you know how to align yourself to just be a better human, you actually don't really need a lot of spells and rituals because it all comes from energy. How does that land for you? Does that?
I mean, it lands beautifully for me because I get it. I hope it lands for other people who maybe are still a little squishy about this subject. I hope that they're just willing to be open and have that perspective because, when it comes down to it, you're right. I think everybody just wants to try to be the best they can be. And when you do understand that we are all connected, we're all connected to each other energetically, right? Energy is everywhere and it just transfers. That's all it does.
Right. And that's literally witchcraft as a whole, is that witches just understand that energy is everywhere. And some might say they manipulate the energy. Yes, that's true. And I think that people might fear that if you use the word witch, that you're manipulating the energy for harm. Now, my answer to that is you just have to turn on your social media right now to see that with any great power comes great responsibility, and great power is often misused. And yes, that is the same in every area of life. And, the word witch has a bad rap from hundreds of years, thousands of years of persecuting women that were in places of power, primarily women, some men. But that word triggers most people because they've been conditioned to believe that power is not within them. Power is outside of them, that holds with the source of God. And if a woman is powerful, stands in her place of power, owns her own property, works her own job, heals others, helps her community, births children, uses plants to make medicine, then they're too powerful and they should die. Like, that's literally why people are triggered when they hear the word, to be honest. I mean, that's in a nutshell. So if you feel triggered, I would say, ooh, you might carry some of this wounding or this imprinting of, questioning whether or not it's possible for a woman to be in a position of power.
I think that's a great way to summarize it because it really does. I think it's something that most of us can relate to on some level, as females, especially maybe some females who have stepped into their power to some degree, at least, maybe seeing some of that pushback or questioning, or even just having your own internal self-doubt when you actually are there. that maybe you hold yourself back for the fear of the judgment that's going to come your way.
Yes, it's so faceted, which is why I brought up the word witch wound, because having a witch wound is not just that you've been harmed for being in a position of power, you've been taken for granted, or you've been, you've had a part of your sexuality taken for granted. Like all these things sit in the witch wounding category, but so does being the persecutor, right? I mean, all of us women have been put in positions to be in competition with other women as opposed to supporting other women. And a lot of times that stems from the fear of, if you are in a place of power and I'm not, then I'm reflecting it back on myself as not being good enough. And then we judge ourselves, and then boom, trigger happens. This is witch work, right?
Well, and I know most women that I've encountered, they have experienced that on both sides, right? Either you're that female who feels like you're in competition with someone else, so she can't win because I need to, or you're that one who is trying to celebrate others but doesn't feel that it comes the other way. And that competition between women, I mean, I don't know that most people would have kind of brought that back to having that experience, whatever, centuries and centuries and centuries ago, as just how that was established. And maybe putting it into this context will help somebody decide that, oh, I don't actually have to compete against that female. I actually can cheer for her and celebrate her, even if I'm not in a good place. And maybe I'm not where she is, but I'm in a different place, and that's also good. Or maybe it's not exactly where I want to be yet, and yet I'm going to do whatever I can to get to where I want to be. And this idea of collaboration, or at least just the support and the guidance versus this combative competitiveness that I see exists everywhere, whether it's with a friend, it's with a sibling, it's with a complete stranger. It is what I think the default mode for a female is. I don't think men do this, that at least not to the extent that women do.
And you just, summarized that so well. It is pervasive, right, in our lifestyle. I mean, we were raised that way in school. We were raised that way in all kinds of different scenarios, whether it be in, competitive sports, or whether it be in, different communities. And here's the thing, there wasn't a lot of breeding ground for us to emulate the idea that women can be big, emotional, powerful, soft, and strong, like all at the same time. So we got like put in these boxes, and it was like there was limited room in this box, right? It was like, here's a box for the strong women, and only 3 can fit in there. And so there's a competition to be the strong one. So then you got to kick somebody out to get in. And it just doesn't work like that. And the thing is that I would say that we know now, especially when we go back to collective energy, when women are rooted and safe and strong and come together, we're a force to be reckoned with, especially when we combine. And this is going to be such a strange topic for me to go down. This is going to be, I just got presented this, so I'm going to, if you think of in the Bible where, God talks about where 2 or more are joined, or 2 or more come together, God will be present. And honestly, like I know this for most people, they'll be like, you're a witch and you're talking about the Bible. Yes. And yes, I do think that when you feel that heart coherence happen between 2 women like you and I have, and more communities have, and you bring that into one ball of energy, there is nothing else like it, because, women, we are the ones that birth the new humans. Every single human on this planet comes from a woman. And so women have the ability to center their hearts together very differently than men. And that is, honestly, that is a threat to a lot of different, I'll just say, like the big schools of power controls. They prefer women to be in their lane, and in those little boxes that they put them in. And that makes us competitive, instead of when we empower them, it actually empowers us.
Yeah. And that's not to say that there's not also an incredibly important role for men in the world.
Oh my gosh. Yes. This is not.
You and I both believe that there is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not any man that's listening to this. None of what I'm talking about is your fault. This is just the way that humans have evolved in a society that wants to keep us small. And I really think that if there's anything you and I can show people, is that as different as we are, right? And thinking 7 years ago till now, how much we've evolved and how much we've changed, that it is possible to hold another woman's heart, right? In as great of reverence to grow and soar and be all the things that you want to be with complete, utter devotion with no threat to who I'm going to be. And yeah, we are a living proof of that. When that happens, look at the result.
I know. One of the lines, so I read the preamble to your book, and I texted you that I'm having chills with all of these lines, but one of them that really stands out to me is choice is your superpower. So let's talk about that. So you asked this question, is this all there is? And clearly the answer to you was no. And so then you decide to go on this, well, maybe you didn't decide, maybe it was just presented to you and you went with it, right? But you made a choice, obviously, at some point to really, really invest your time, your energy, all your things into this part of you. Let's talk about what that process looked like, and then talk about this idea of choice as your superpower.
Oh, and I'm so glad you got to read that. So glad. And thank you for that. I say the choice is the big C, right? That sits between the B and the D, the B of birth, the D of death, right? Between birth and death sits this whole period of time where we get to choose. And I'm going to tell you a story to take you through how, to me, choice really becomes your superpower. And if you were to think about it, like, we live in these gigantic made up ideas, and we'll call that a house, right? Like our idea, or let's call it a castle. And if we think of the prescription of what it means to be successful is the material things and all the stuff you buy, and it all lives in this castle, and it's sparkly and it's nice and it's safe, right? When you ask the question, is this all there is? It's asking the question to step out of what you know to be true to have happiness and success. And it's a big question to ask, because what it means you're doing is taking a pause from looking around and chasing more stuff and buying more stuff or trying to be something different to fit in, and stepping towards the door and opening the door. When you ask the question, is this all there is? And you actually choose to open the door and start seeing the unseen worlds, which are things like energy, which are things like the vibration that comes from a tree that sits outside your window, or what it feels like in your body to really feel what it is that you have going on, your real emotions. Everything that you have in your castle it becomes less important. And when that happens and it becomes less important, then you have to choose again. Because to choose to stay in that place where trees talk, or maybe you see a great grandfather walk in front of you, like where all these wild things happen, to stay in that world and not go back into the box where the things and the titles and the accomplishments sit. Most of the time, we all have to cut loose a lot of heavy weight that we're carrying that's stuck back there in the castle that we were in, which are things like trauma, beliefs, right? Conditioning. And every single thing that you do in that path of like stepping out of that box and going more into the unseen worlds has to be a choice, because it is going against what you've been taught to believe that you need to do in order to be happy. And that's the big power of choice. And that's why it's a superpower, because once you realize you can choose, you're like, oh, wait, I don't have to carry all that stuff. I don't have to do these things. I don't have to spend my time this way to be happy. I can choose it. Well, it becomes, it becomes like a kid in a candy store. You're like, well, I choose this, and then I choose this, and then I choose this. And then it's like, well, wait, I can't choose that because my backpack of bricks gives me old conditioning and beliefs and trauma, and I can't quite choose that yet. So then I have to choose to go and take that brick out. And then I can have that other little piece of candy that lives over here in these fun worlds. Choice is a superpower. It is your ability to know that you can choose what you're going to live next.
Do you also think that maybe some people see choice as something they'd rather not have? Because if there is choice, then it requires you to make a choice. And making that choice can be scary, and the unknown and hard work. And maybe I'd rather just not know there's choice, because then I don't have to do anything and stay in my castle.
Hey, we know lots of people that are happy living in that castle, buying more stuff, and more power to them. That's the brilliance of choice, because
but are they happy? but are they happy?
Wow.
Right? That's the thing. So I think about like even having a school uniform, right? Takes the choice out of it. The decision's easy. This is what I wear because this is the only option. And so we eliminate choice to make our lives easy in some ways. I'm going to eat the same thing for breakfast every day, so I don't have to think about it. Don't have to make a choice. This is it. This is what I do. Once I've been opened up to the buffet of options, well, gosh, now I don't know what to do. And so maybe I default to my normal because that's what's safe. So when you are maybe helping somebody move through this concept of choice as a superpower versus choice is kind of this annoying thing that maybe I'd rather not have, what are some of the steps to open that up, that idea up, that whatever choice you make, which this is what I believe, whatever choice you make is the right choice. Because I think this is where people battle. Well, the what if? Well, what if I make this choice? What if I should have made that choice? And then you make a choice, you're like, oh, I shouldn't have made that choice. So what kind of narrative and changing those kind of beliefs, what does that process look like?
That's a really, really good question. And there's a very smart woman that once told me that you get to choose your hard. You can choose it hard this way, or you can choose it hard this way. So, in Buddhism, they say that everything in life is suffering. You just choose which way you want to suffer. Same thing. The easiest way to move people into understanding that choice is a superpower is to walk through the baby steps of the fact that you are choosing all the time. You just are. You're choosing what you eat. You're choosing how well you sleep. You're choosing who you spend time with. And these are kind of hard pills to swallow. Listen, I never said that I come in like nice and gentle, easy. Which, I mean, I come in with a little sass or a little sizzle sometimes. But the thing is that you are choosing all the time. And the smallest steps that you can take really are to start having, self-reflection, self-accountability, which is why things like what I teach, and I have a journal coming out too, is to really just reflect between you and you. Start gently with yourself. Start looking at yourself. And you can even just start with today. Like, what do I get to own as part of today? Because we are, constantly co-creating, because you're choosing and I'm choosing and she's choosing and he's choosing. So we're intermixing with all these things around us, but there's always something that we're choosing that day. So starting even with just that day, like for example, I chose to use this black mug when I was going to be meeting with you today. It has a beautiful pentagram on it. It says Colorado hippie on it. And that was a choice. And me owning even just one small thing like that, slowly you just start looking at your day and your time through, I'm choosing this. And that's step one. Step two, you brought up a very good question, is I know a lot of people, as do you, that have a hard time actually making the choice. They know they have a choice. They might not like it, but they have a hard time making a choice. And that's why I teach and talk so much about being connected to your body, because your body is like the greatest of all pendulums. Your body has intuition. And in my book, I actually teach a ritual to learn how your body deciphers a yes and a no, so you can get feedback from your body. So if you're just not sure, should I make this choice? Should I use the blue mug today, or should I use the black mug today? Well, if I attune my body to yes and no, I can hold the black mug and ask my body a question like, should I use the black one today? And my body's going to go, oh, yes. And I'm going to be like, okay. So really it's learning to accept that you're making choices all the time. At least in my opinion, this is how I teach it. And then number two is learn how to use your body to start making the simple decisions that are hard. And slowly over time, you can build in practices that help you really look at how to make decisions. Decision fatigue is real as well.
Yeah.
But we're doing it anyway.
Yeah, that's the nature of the life we live, right? So let's talk a little bit about your journey through all of this specifically. I was there for obviously not every step of it, but I got to see some peaks of it along the way. And it's wild. It really is. And for someone who gets it, like I get it. For someone, if you had told that to somebody else, they might have wanted to institutionalize you, right? Mm-hmm. So share just a little bit of what that progression for you from deciding to step out of the broom closet to being fully like that high temple priestess that you are today.
There's one thing that happened in my life, one of many things, but one thing that happened in my life that really gave me perspective that I sometimes forget is a program that I now have running. It's a undercurrent to everything I do. And occasionally it pops into my mind, and it just popped into my mind when you said that. And it's, there was a time in wow, like I can remember like it was yesterday, I had a complication following a simple surgery to remove a tumor from my breast. And I ended up very sick and had, additional surgeries and spent time in, the ICU. And I thought that was it. Like, and I remember parts of it. I remember feeling like, wow, I had a pretty, damn good life. My kids are teenagers, they'll be fine. And I remember like scrolling through life as I had lived it, and okay, there's more I could have done, but I really felt pretty good. Like if I had gone then, I felt pretty good, right? And then, and I don't classify this as a near death experience. I classify this as I went to the edge of the cliff. I saw the other side. Like I saw it, and I stayed on my side of the cliff. But when I woke up the next day, I realized, wow, like I'm still here. I'm still here. And that was a pretty big turning point for me. And it changed the way that I looked at experiencing a lot of my days. And like I said, it's still an undercurrent of my programming. It's like it reset me. It's like I had an upgrade to my iPhone in that moment. And then what happens is I've been experiencing these little layers of tests along the way at how comfortable I am taking that message, right? That part of how important it is to live life to the fullest, to be happy, to question if this is all there is. I've been tested continually at how comfortable I am having that conversation, which means I started a podcast. And as you know, and I started it, talking about being an entrepreneur, and then I slowly started weaving in spiritual talks, and I slowly started talking about witchcraft. And then just one day I'm like, that's it. Like this is the piece of the recipe that I don't talk about publicly. And then I did. And I'm saying it as if it happened fast, but it did not. It was definitely a process for me to be comfortable. And you weren't the only person I had that conversation with. I had a circle of friends that I sat down one at a time and said, by the way, I'm a witch, and I'm going to start talking about this on my podcast, just so you know. And the reaction and support that I got was amazing. It wasn't at all what I thought that it would be, because people know me. By the core of who I am didn't change. The difference is what changed as I started talking about how I got to be who I am. And then after that, there was another level of when I decided to start doing more video style content. And then I did a lot of that for years. And, what's really crazy, if you think about it now, I probably speak in front of, on this topic alone, 500,000 people a week, publicly, with no discomfort of being seen, until the book came. And then that was like another level. It's another level, right? And so I say that in most instances, as with all things, we build resilience. So I built resilience and confidence, with the people that loved me, that knew who I was, and talking about my practices and rituals and magic. And then it just became second nature to do that. And then I started doing that kind of publicly. And then I realized all these people do that too, and needed a safe space to go and talk about it. And so from there, I just continued to talk about it. And also I learn a lot along the way. I don't think I always have it right or get it right, but I really like to learn. So it's been fun.
Well, and I think you speak to something that almost everybody can relate to, that we wear masks for varieties of reasons in various situations. But at some point, if you don't peel off the mask, you are not going to be the best version of you. And it doesn't mean everyone's going to peel off their mask and be a witch, right? That's right. Probably not what is actually even intended to happen in life. But thinking about how authentic of a life are you living, and is holding back also holding you back from living your best version of you? And the reason we hold back is because of the fear of judgment, right? I know the fear of people are going to reject me. They're not going to believe me. They're not going to like me. I'm going to lose friends. I'm going to lose business. Obviously, those are reasons why you just weren't like, hey, I'm a witch, this is what I do, right from the get-go when you fully knew it. And so it's a process for everybody. Same with me. I think about just me sharing my yucky parts of my story and the first time that I said out loud to a group of people that I hit up 3 Dairy Queens in town after I quit gymnastics, I didn't even realize I said it out loud because I'd said it in my head and I knew it for decades. That I was like, oh my gosh, that's the first time I ever told anybody. And I had like 30 people looking at me like, and then they looked at me like, oh my gosh, she's just like me. Mm-hmm. Now, not all 30 people could relate to what I did, but a lot of them could relate on some level. And I think that's where you and I, through our own growth, have really realized that when you are open and vulnerable and you just speak your truth, there are going to be so many more people who support you, or at least who are curious. Maybe I don't get it, but gosh, I kind of want to learn. I want to know I want to know more about this. This is totally brand new to me. Share with me what that's like. When you are willing to step out of your own version of your broom closet, you are probably going to get so much more coming back from you that you ever could imagine. For sure, there are going to be people who shun you, don't like it, don't believe it, whatever. That's also just part of life, right? We're not ever going to be everybody's cup of tea. And yet when you at the core of you and you have the confidence because you have the belief in you to do that, your life will change exponentially. So how have you seen your life change once you fully embraced and live the authentic version of you?
It's all inner, it's all inward. This is like the greatest quest of our entire lifetime is to be able to connect with just yourself. And so much of what you just shared is so much about our own self-confidence, like our own value, our own worth, our own ability to truly see ourselves and be okay with our perfectly imperfectness, right? That's, wow, if I could spend my whole life talking to every single woman on the planet about their perfectly imperfectness, I would be a happy camper, because that right there is, and I don't even remember what the question was, but that was the answer, is that it's an inside, for me, it's an inside job. So to me, everything that I do on the inside of me changes and is reflected on the outside of me. Where I live, the clothes I wear, the things I choose to have or not have, the experiences I have, the friends I have, the life I live is 100% a reflection of how much I'm willing to go inward. It's almost like, I'll use the analogy of, if you think of a tree branch growing high into the cosmos and higher to heaven, the only way your branches will grow is the deeper your roots go. And your roots go in the quiet, dark by themselves, right? So I spend a lot of time, especially now, especially when I do like a lot of big work publicly, a lot of time alone, just dealing with the inside of me, with my heart, with my belly, with my feelings, with my mind, with my thoughts, with my beliefs. I mean, that's the first place. That's it. That's like giving yourself your own oxygen before you share it with someone else. That right there is what creates what you're living. And I don't know what the question was, but I feel like that's where I felt that is, it's between us and us.
Well, so the question was, how has your life changed since you stepped into this full version of you? I will tell you from my perspective, obviously you made a big move across the country to a different environment, which is very hard because you left where you knew all the things and left family and grandchild and things. And yet I see I see you just as this peaceful version of somebody who just offers her gifts to other people. And I think personally that is one of the most generous things a person can do, because I can only imagine what it's like to take on, because the things you're talking about are very heavy when you're working with people, helping them break through traumas, break through limiting beliefs, like step into these healing practices. And it's a lot of hard work physically, but energetically, it's a tremendous amount of work as well. And that you have structured your life in a way that you will serve others, but also are nourishing and nurturing you, even though that means making a complete physical adjustment to your life. Mm-hmm. So I feel like it's enhanced your life tremendously. Selfishly, I wish you didn't move across the country. I wish you were still just 30 minutes away from me. But I also feel like we're more connected than ever, even though you're way farther away from me than you ever used to be. So I think for anybody who, is asking that question, is this all there is? And is coming up with the answer, I don't know. Right? Because maybe you ask that question and you say, this is all there is. And great, you're good. Like, keep doing what you're doing. But if you are really curious about, is there more? And what could more look like? Or what does different look like? What are the first steps? I will say I love the first chapter of the book, Let the Magic Begin. So how do people let the magic begin?
Okay, steps. Such a good question, because I'm asked this a lot, especially on social media. Like, where do I start? What do I do? my first answer to that is start separating from your digital devices at least once or twice a day and spend time outside. Like, if you truly want to explore if there's something more, then turn off everything else but just yourself. You and you. I like to, prescribe, 2 sets of 10 minutes a day of alone time. And this is really funny, but do you know that the youth of today call going for a walk without their phone and their earbuds walking naked? It's called going out naked. Like, this is the new way that they describe like not having a device. So I'm like, go out naked twice a day. And people are like, what? I'm like, okay, wait. Go out without your device, without your phone, and truly listen and feel yourself and feel nature. Like that, it's the easiest thing. You don't have to buy anything to do it. You don't have to, ask anyone else for it. It's between you and you. After that, after you get used to that, you're going to start feeling, some thoughts come in that you're going to want to remember, things that you're going to think of or that are going to inspire you or that you're going to experience. And so then you should add in a journal practice, right? And that can be literally 2 minutes when you come back from time by yourself. And if you don't live in a place where it's easy to walk every single day, at least be in a room or in a space in the quiet by yourself. And listen, I know lots of people that do that in their car. During the pandemic, all of my sessions pretty much happened with people in their cars, parked a block away from their house. It's great. There are ways to find solitude. So what I'm really talking about is turning your attention a couple of times a day inward between you and you. Now, you can ask yourself a question and just think on it. You can chew on a topic. You can practice breath work. You can meditate. You can do anything in these 2 periods of time a day. But if you commit to doing that for, say, 30 days, twice a day for 10 minutes, then talk to me about how you're feeling, because things will have already begun to shift. You'll start to feel these little like minor earthquakes in your life, and it'll be between you and you. Again, it'll be the things that maybe you want to get better at in life, or maybe you'll spiral and you'll be in the shadows for a little bit. And listen, as a self-proclaimed shadow walker, I do carry and transmute dark, deep, heavy energy for people quite often, because when you start spending time with yourself, it's going to reveal only a couple of things. Number 1, the things that you truly desire that you haven't been willing to admit. Number 2, where you're unhappy and where you want to make change but haven't yet done. Or number 3, the things that you're still processing that are traumatic in your life. And honestly, it's a good thing, right? We talked about choosing your heart. Once you start to explore these things, you can heal them fast. It doesn't mean that you're going to have to you might need to go down the rabbit hole of, seeking help and processing things. That might be cute. But what also might be cute in that time is, well, yes, I might need to process some stuff over here, which has kept me from being alone with myself, because my inner critic comes out and starts telling me all the things I should be doing. But maybe you also start to mine for little nuggets of gold where you're like, well, that thing I always wanted to do, or that project I always wanted to accomplish, or maybe that cabinet I wanted to repaint in the other room. It all kind of comes simultaneously. And what's happening is you're starting to bring your senses that are connected between like your heart and your soul back online. And there's lots of processing that happens, but it's not complicated. It's such a simple way to start. And yeah, that would be as a simple way. I mean, it sounds simple. Try it.
Well, to that point, right, it isn't complicated. I think we like to overcomplicate things, that we have to do all these things. And yet so many people don't like to sit and be quiet with themselves, because then they will hear what's up in here. Mm-hmm. And if you don't like it, we're conditioned to deflect from it, find something to distract us from it, take a substance or, something to make us feel better because we don't want to deal with it. And yet it's in that silence that you hear the noise that you can then decide about a choice, right? This is now where choice comes in. I'm either going to choose to do something with it or I'm going to choose not to. Mm-hmm. And I think it comes down to that. Not only is there more, or is this all there is, but do you want more? And if you want more or different, you have to do the work. You have to start exploring somehow, some way.
I can put with 100% certainty that there is not a single human listening to this that doesn't have something more that they want that they haven't yet experienced. 100% certainty.
Agreed.
So there is.
And at the same time, they're coming up with all the reasons why they haven't, or why they can't.
Or why they don't deserve it, or why they haven't earned it, or why they're conditioned to believe that that's not for them.
Yeah, exactly.
I say, no. It's all meant for you. It's all.
Yep. And on that note, let's talk about your book in the journal, because it's so delicious. And oh my goodness, there's going to be is this all there is? No, this is not all there is. Tahverlee's got so much more planned. So before we officially wrap up, let's talk about the book, the journal, and then all the other things that are coming.
Yeah, Sacred Magic, Witch's Guide to Earth Wisdom. So I've taken all of my years of awakening experience and all the classes that I teach in mystery school and all the humans that I've helped. And I'm breaking down all the teachings into the 4 elements. So we start in book 1 to the north, which is the element of earth. And it's all about the connection to our body, connecting to nature, what kind of spirits sit in this upper quadrant. So if you were to picture a circle and you look at it traditionally the north is to the top, or if you move yourself in your own mind, depending on how the screen is, if you move it to the right, it's to the element of air to the east, the south is fire, and the west is water. If you picture that whole wheel and see yourself sitting in the middle, every direction you turn yourself from that middle faces you towards an element. And that element, you can explore spirits, spiritual gifts. You can explore, in the north, it's your connection to your body. In the east, it's your connection to your mind. In the south, it's your connection to your passion. In the west, it's your connection to your water to flow, to your emotions. And so I break it down and I take people through real stories of all the times I didn't get it right, lots of times that trauma came up, and I unearthed all the ways in which I shattered and rebuilt. And then I provide teachings on how to bring more of real magic into your life, because sacred magic is really studying transformation. It's like magic and mindset, right? That's, to me, real magic is about transformation. And so I walk through all the ways in my life in which I've done that and how you can do it too. And there's rituals and there's spells if you want to do spells. And I have an oracle deck coming out as well, which contains some of the art you see behind me, and a journal as well. But the book will be up first, and I'm so excited. So I have 3 more books coming. This is the first in the 4 Elements series.
And it's so fantastic. If for no other reason, people should read it because your story is fascinating. Your life is fascinating. And as somebody who's only even known a very small part of it, I can't wait to read it to get to know all the parts. So anything before we officially sign off that we haven't touched on that you want the listeners to know?
Only to keep asking that question, right? Is this all there is? Is this as happy as I can be? Is this as magical as life can be? Is this as fulfilling as I desire it to be? Am I as joyful and as exuberant or as dark and stormy as I want to be? Is this what I want? That's what I would leave people with, because that, to me, that exploration takes you out of the box and into the entire sky being the possibility of what you can do in your life.
So fantastic. So beautiful, my friend. Thank you. We'll put every link to everything about you in the show notes. So listeners, I know it's a lot to take in. It's a lot to digest. Listen to this over and over, get her books, follow her on Instagram and TikTok and all the things. Truly let your magic begin. And you start by going and being a better being.
Thank you for listening to the Be a Better Being podcast. We hope that what you heard today inspires you to embrace this journey of life with an open mind, a kind heart, and a willingness to learn and evolve. If you have a show topic idea or would like to be a guest, please visit betterbeings.net and fill out a contact form. Until next time, go and be a better being.